Good morning, I'm with Jess Green, spoken word poet, and we're going to talk a little bit about her inspirations for her work and her plans for the future.
Well, I've always written. I can't remember a time when I didn't write, and growing up, I really liked poets like Benjamin Zephaniah and Roger McGuff, and particularly poets where the emphasis was on kind of the performance aspect. I always remember being quite inspired by the fact that Benjamin Zephaniah was really dyslexic and really struggled to kind of write anything down in a sort of in the traditional sense of the words, but kind of performing wise was really good and got a message across. And then I was really interested in writing, and then after I finished college, sixth form college in Leicester, I went and did a creative writing degree in Liverpool, and it was up there that I discovered a real kind of performance poetry scene, and that was kind of men in the back of pubs kind of telling stories and poems and that sort of thing, and you go to all these poetry nights and you'd meet a cross section of people, and you'd hear stories from strangers that you would never hear just in normal conversation. And I was really inspired by that, and that's kind of what made me want to get into it. And then as I kind of got more into kind of the performance poetry scene, I was obviously influenced by people like, Kate Tempest, Luke Wright, those people that have been around for years and have been doing it for far longer than I have. So yeah. I think, like I say, initially it was that going to poetry nights in whatever form that may take, whether that's really formal on stage in a theatre or whether that's in a pub, and actually hearing stories from people and being able to tell your own stories that you never would normally, that you never would just in a conversation with someone. And I think the poetry is something that is by the way that it's often taught in schools and presented in libraries and the national curriculum and in art scenes, is something that can be quite inaccessible. But performing it and making it more accessible by putting it into those settings means that it does speak to people, I think, more effectively, and I really like that. Not really from friends and family. They've always been quite supportive. I think people are often, when I've been writing a show that we've just taken to Edinburgh, a full-length show which is quite political, and it's set in an international secondary school, and I've been writing that for the past year, and as kind of word got round that I was writing something that was about education, as I was going into schools and meeting teachers, actually I did find that teachers became a little bit wary about kind of telling me about their own difficult experiences, or actually positive, any kind of experiences of working in schools. And there was a kind of running joke in a couple of schools where they were like, "Oh, don't tell that to Jess, she'll put it in a poem." So I think there was that kind of wariness about it. Apart from that, socially, I haven't really come across any sort of negativity in that way. Yeah, there's obviously always kind of internet trolls and things. When the Mr. Go video started getting quite a lot of attention, there were a lot of kind of people with just different beliefs to me, quite right-wing people. Could be quite nasty. And I got kind of lots of kind of comments on the video, and kind of people did send me kind of the odd message and things, sort of, basically saying that they disagree with me. Some people more eloquent than others. Some people really wanted to kind of break down my argument and actually debate about it. Other people were just kind of, I don't know, it's just a torrent of abuse, really. So yeah. I think that, well, with the stuff that's online, and it's kind of just, that it's just trolling. It's just people wanting to just wind you up and have a fight with you. That it's just best to just ignore it. Otherwise, if you got upset by every nasty comment, you drive yourself mad. I think people that genuinely do want to have a debate with you about your views and about why they might disagree with you, I never think the internet is the best place to do that, and I never think like email or anything kind of written down in that way is the best place to do that. But I have had, actually thinking about it, like on Facebook, I did have a couple of people that I knew vaguely who on Facebook were like, you know, I don't agree with you, and actually I really support a lot of what he's done. And actually it was about, you know, sending them a message to kind of talk about that and talk about what they've experienced in their lives that makes them think that some of those education reforms were a really good idea, and then sharing my own experiences. And actually, that's quite a good thing to do, I think. But having said that, you know, there was a lot of kind of, you know, I think it's quite difficult online because things can be misconstrued, and you know, your tone and all that sort of thing doesn't really come across than if you're having a conversation with someone face to face. So I think, you know, you kind of pick your battles, you decide whether is this a battle that's worth fighting, and you go from there. And I think in terms of, I mean, what I do in terms of working as a poet is split into different sections. Like there is the writing and performing side of it, and then there's also kind of the workshop stuff that I do, and I enjoy those both equally. I think in terms of the writing and performing, I don't know, it sounds really maybe a bit kind of cliche, but I just kind of keep finding things that I want to say. I never sit down and write anything unless I've actually got something that I want to say, and that's not always like profound, you know, that's not always kind of talking about political reforms or, you know, society or anything like that. You know, sometimes, I mean, I've got one poem which is one of my favourite ones to perform that's just about me and my old flatmate going clubbing in Liverpool, you know, and so as long as I've got something to say, I will keep writing. And then in terms of the kind of the workshop side of stuff that I do, I work with a real range of people. So I work with like kids in schools, I run like an over 55 writing group, I work in probation hostels, so a real range of stuff. And I think, you know, I could make all the money in the world from doing the writing and performing. I would still want to do the workshops. I think it's really important that, particularly with an art form like poetry, that isn't, like I say, isn't very accessible, that people who do it and enjoy it try to make it accessible to as many people as possible, and try and break down some of those sort of barriers about it being, you know, very highbrow and very kind of difficult to understand, and you need to be very intelligent to understand it, to engage with it. So those are the reasons that I continue to do what I do. No, we absolutely did not respect the two at all. I wrote the piece from the point of view of a character as part of the show, the Burning Books show. So it wasn't me speaking, it's a character speaking, and it's a sort of 60-year-old woman on a picket line who's spent her life teaching and sort of fighting for her pension, against the reforms to education and that sort of thing. And I performed it at a night in a pub, and someone recorded it on their iPhone and put it online, and it wasn't a good performance at all. I wasn't happy with it, but it started getting quite a few views. So I said to my friend who's a filmmaker, could we make a kind of a proper film of it, so that if people did want to see it, I could direct them to that. So that's the reason why we made the film. And then we put it up, and then I think we put it up on the Thursday, and then the Friday night I went up to Liverpool for the weekend, and my mum rang me on the Saturday morning and was like, it's got like 100,000 views. And we were really shocked, and it was just strange. Like, you know, I didn't know who all these people were that were watching it, and like people got messaging me saying it had been shared and things, and yeah, I mean, it was lovely. It was such a nice feeling to think that it had engaged people and on such a positive level. I was getting kind of, for about 3 weeks afterwards, I was getting lots and lots and lots of messages, mostly from teachers. And loads of those were really lovely, but there were some really kind of heartbreaking stories that I was getting, like particularly, I'd go to bed at like 11 and I'd get up at 6 in the morning, and I'd get these emails that come through at like 2 or 3 in the morning from teachers that just said, I am on the brink, I have taught for 20 years and I feel like I can't do this anymore, I'm lonely, I feel like no one understands how hard my job is. I feel completely worn down by the pressures of my job. And every day I open a newspaper or turn on the news and the finger of blame is being pointed at me and other people working in my profession. And that was really heartbreaking, and that happened every day, every night for about 3 weeks, and it was really sad to actually hear those stories from people who otherwise wouldn't be heard. I felt that with a lot of the messages that I got, they were kind of like, a lot of them were kind of like jubilant, like people were saying how pleased they were that actually this video and this message was being seen on such a wide platform, because in other places they just weren't being heard. So I guess in that way, that was a good thing. I guess kind of. I mean, there were a few weeks that were very strange. Kind of, I was asked to go on like Loose Women and sort of teleprograms like that, which I did turn down. But in terms of, on a personal level, I'm getting quite a lot more kind of more work and more gigs, which is lovely, and that's really nice. I'm being asked to do kind of work that I didn't think I ever would, like kind of going and speaking at sort of education conferences, and I still don't quite know how comfortable I am about that, because I'm not a teacher, and I keep having to say to people, I am not a teacher, I cannot pretend to be a teacher, if you really don't know. But I don't know, it's been a bit strange, like obviously when Gove stepped down, a lot of people messaged me and said, well, you're going to do one about Nicky Morgan? And I was like, well, she's not done anything yet, it's just been a view shuffle, and she's going on a holiday for 6 weeks, we'll just see what happens. And I kind of did get a bit worried that I was sort of, I was the education or the anti-Gove poet, and I was kind of turning up to gigs and I was like, do I do the Gove poem? I don't know, and is it expected? Or, but no, I mean, it's just one of those things, isn't it? Things, viral videos and that sort of thing, they just come and go, I'm just kind of, getting on. People keep saying, well, you're going to do another Gove one or another education one, and actually I'm like, well, I do kind of have other things that I write about, so yeah. Yeah, we took our show for a week up to the Edinburgh Fringe, and it's now a long poetry and music show set in a secondary school, and it's a real mix of stuff. Like it is political. There is the Gove pieces in there, and there are the political pieces in there. But this was one thing that I was a bit worried after the Gove video. I was worried that people kept saying, "Oh, we're definitely going to come and see your show in Edinburgh," and I kept having to say it's not like an hour of anti-Gove, and there were characters in the show that are quite like flawed. Like there's a teacher he's a science teacher and he's a ketamine addict, and I did come up with that idea before Breaking Bad, but and I was kind of really worried that maybe teachers would come along and they wanted it to be really, really pro-teaching all the way through, and it is generally, but there are these kind of flawed characters in it because it is kind of a comedy piece. But no, it's kind of me and 2 musicians. And it was brilliant. We took it up and we didn't really know what to expect, but we had kind of set-out shows every day, and we got a 4-star review, which we were really pleased with. And now we've got some dates to take it around the country, which will be nice. So yeah, it went really well. So much of like so much like our mainstream art, and if we take that, I think that a lot of what young people engage with is predominantly things like music and film, and I mean, if we're going to talk about music and using ideas like previous artists like John Lennon and Marvin Gaye, now for you to be a success and go into kind of mainstream media musically, you need to be picked up by one of these huge record labels, or you need to go on X Factor and win it. You need to be picked up by someone like Simon Cowell. And I think that so often those big companies that have huge amounts of money to put into people do have very right-wing values. And they're so much more about kind of like, glossiness and sexiness, and I think there's the real. And obviously there are also huge issues around sexism in the music industry and stuff like that. And actually, it's more about kind of making more and more and more money, rather than kind of pushing a particular message. And I don't know, maybe I'm not old enough to be able to say why, maybe I've not had enough life experience to be able to say why, but I think that those kind of like messages, those important messages, just aren't as interesting, aren't as sellable. I mean, these are the people that run these, you know, huge music labels that take on these artists are usually people that are going for every tax avoidance scheme going, you know, and all those kind of things. So of course they're not going to be interested in kind of like left-wing protest singers, you know. You know, so much of what we see and listen to and watch is driven by like the media and like you know, whether that's kind of newspapers or magazines or the news, and so much of that is run by very right-wing corporations. So you know, like you take the example of the Daily Mail, who really celebrate those kind of pop singers and celebrities, whether they're, you know, giving them you know, airtime or pages because they've lost weight or put on weight or any of that, you know, all that kind of stuff, or had a baby or done drugs or that kind of thing. You know, they're giving them that kind of publicity because that's the kind of message that they want to push. Yeah. I don't think that it is something that's completely dead in the water. I don't think that it's something that you know, we should just write off, because actually with the rise of things like, you know, YouTube and social networking, you can have protest artists who can, you know, become more mainstream. In the same way, you know, I don't in no way say that I was mainstream, but in the same way that we put a video up that was hugely political and it got 300,000 views, and actually I got lots and lots of messages from a lot of like teenage girls who hadn't thought about anything kind of vaguely political before. So I think that it is something that we should always strive for, and those important messages should continue to people should create art about those important messages. And I think we should use social media and YouTube and that sort of thing to really, really push them. You know, because if we give up, then you know, what's the point? I think, you know, in terms of performance poetry, I think there's no kind of magic formula. I think all I can say is, you know, you go and watch and listen to as much stuff as possible. Go and find out the stuff that you like, the stuff that you don't like, form your own opinions, find out what you want to write about, what you enjoy writing about, and then actually go and perform it somewhere. Go and find where your local open mic night is, or any of that sort of stuff. But also, you know, if you live on the Isle of Man or the Back of Beyond, you know, go and film it on your iPhone and put it online, any of that sort of stuff. And all I can say is just keep doing it. You know, if you enjoy something, just keep going, and eventually, you know, you'll get somewhere.